Good morning. My name is Carla Brown, and I am the Director of Partnerships and Operations at the National Peace Corps Association. I'd like to take this moment before introducing our two speakers to welcome. Apparently, we have some current Peace Corps volunteers on the line. We'd like to take a moment to acknowledge you, and we're so happy that you've officially joined the Peace Corps family, whether it was a few months ago, a few years ago. We're glad that you're part of it and that you're able to be here. The National Peace Corps Association will be your final stop on your Peace Corps train, I would say, to remain part of the family for once you've, either now or later, because we represent the larger, broader community. I'd also like to welcome those who are not speaking that are here on the phone from the Peace Corps family on the other side of Washington, in Washington, D.C. We know that there are people that are not speaking but are working from headquarters. Welcome to the call as well. I also have some colleagues from the National Peace Corps Association that are on the line. Again, big welcome to my colleagues for supporting what we consider to be a great collaboration and ongoing relationship with the Peace Corps to continue and really to push and advocate for the third goal of the organization. So with that, I will introduce our two speakers on the phone. The first one is Kimberly Hill. She is the Chief of Operations for the Africa region. She has over 20 years of federal service experience, first starting with AmeriCorps, where she spent around 14 years. And then she served as the Director of Programming and Training with the Peace Corps in East Swahili. And in 2023, she started in her current role as Chief of Operations for the Africa region. And then we will hear from Sherene Morley, who is currently the country director in the Gambia. She is a RPCV who served in Lesotho, where she worked with Women's Initiative that covering both Lesotho and Kenya. So she has had historically a real passion for issues related to gender, racial justice, and equity. She has also worked for USAID, and she was also one of the founding partners of Prosperity for Candles, which is a social enterprise organization that focused on candle production with women. So I think both of these people are going to give us just have a rich conversation and really lead us through a rich conversation. So I'm not going to take up much time except for to say welcome and thank you very much for your willingness to participate today. With that, I'll pass it over to Kimberly.
All right, well, thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Really pleased to be here with you all and give you all some highlights regarding Peace Corps service in the Africa region. So just to get started, next slide. I just want to give you a little bit about some facts and figures pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic. As maybe some of you know, we have had a thriving volunteer service history in Africa region. We've had over 80,000 Peace Corps volunteers who have served in the Africa region since the Peace Corps was established in 1961. And prior to the global pandemic, we had Peace Corps volunteers serving in 24 countries with over 3,000 volunteers. As you know, what we're calling kind of the pause during COVID, that really shifted our global pipeline of invitees and potential applicants. So since we have returned to service now since we had volunteers re-enter back in 2022, we have welcomed about a little over 1,000 volunteers in 22 countries. And then just recently in 2023, we're seeing a kind of a small uptick where we've invited 877 trainees in 21 countries. And since August, we now have close to 1,000 trainees in 22 posts. So we are building back slowly but surely. Next slide, please. So just to give you a few more kind of facts, in our 2-year program, we have 893 volunteers currently serving. In response, we have 46. And a nice, I think, thing that we can kind of claim for Africa region is that we were one of the first regions to utilize the new service model, which we know to be virtual service participants, where so far we have engaged over 300 virtual service participants in 18 of our Africa countries. So it's really wonderful to see how we have been able to utilize all the various streams of service to really meet our community needs. Next slide. So like with probably the other EMA and IAP regions, Africa region also utilizes all the various streams of service in order to address the country requests and community needs. So we are currently in where we have volunteers placed in the agriculture sector, community economic development, education, environment, health, and youth in development. We have over 70 what we're calling projects in all of our posts. And we have many projects that are a combination of both health and education sectors. And that is primarily due to our global partnership that we currently have with PEPFAR. Next slide, please. Okay. So when we talk about programming in those sectors, we have a variety of activities. And we have volunteers focusing on issues related to information technology, digital literacy, environment, and climate change, food security, gender equity, HIV/AIDS education, post-country volunteerism, and we have a really strong emphasis right now on service to youth, because currently the median age in the African, I'm so very sorry about that. The median age for our Africa continent is 19. So we have lots and lots of focus on youth. Next slide, please. Just to talk a little bit about our initiatives and some of our what we're calling our global partnerships in the Africa region. We have quite a few of our posts. Right now, we have 12 Africa countries that are focused on what we're calling, which is PEPFAR. And PEPFAR is the president's funding for AIDS relief. And we have been a part of that initiative since its inception in 2003. We have volunteers in this program are working to improve the care, support, and treatment of those living with and affected by HIV/AIDS. And some of the critical work that we're doing in this arena is a brand new initiative that was launched a few years ago called the DREAMS program, where our volunteers and staff work to support services to adolescent girls and young women, and really focus on, again, self-empowerment and helping instill skills that will help them to remain HIV free. Another initiative that we have that's been incredibly successful is what we're calling Stomp Out Malaria. This program trains communities on the use of insecticide treatment beds and nets to provide education on vector control and malaria prevention and treatment. So, and then the third focus that we have currently going in Africa is what I mentioned earlier, is youth engagement. And like I shared earlier, the median age on the Africa continent is 19, and thus our programs prioritize engaging youth as critical partners. Volunteers conduct a wide range of cross-sectorial youth-centered activities that include organizing youth groups to facilitate life and leadership skills development, strengthen self-esteem, and improve communication and decision-making. These youth programs promote civic engagement and enhance the economic futures of our participants. Next slide, please. And so those have been what I might call some of our historical areas of programming that a majority of our volunteers have engaged in over many, many years. But some new things that have recently emerged since the pandemic is a concept that we are now calling side-by-side service. And in FY25, this new global partnership is focused on African youth volunteerism, and this has emerged through partnerships with organizations such as Core Africa. Core Africa was founded by a Peace Corps volunteer, and Core Africa trains highly educated young Africans to help local communities identify and solve their own challenges. A memorandum of understanding was signed in October of 2023, and a pilot with 8 African countries was launched in 2024. Additional pilots are being added in FY 2025. So we're really excited about this initiative. We've heard just really wonderful stories about the partnerships between the Core Africa volunteers and our Peace Corps volunteers in our pilot countries. And we're just really excited to see where this goes. Next slide. And another focus that we've been working on since the reopening is climate initiative. With the launch of Peace Corps' climate initiative, all volunteers will be trained to work with host country partners to contribute to the national priorities and plans to address climate change. Volunteers and their host communities are working together to increase adaptive capacities to build resilience in both individuals that are affected by climate change, but also organizations, communities, ecosystems, and ecosystems. And some of the activities that volunteers have been working in have been to promote climate smart agriculture practices, such as developing community tree nurseries, promoting tree growing, and increasing climate literacy through environmental education. Next slide, please. And finally, I would just say that we were asked to kind of talk about where is the future demand for Peace Corps in Africa. And I can say that right now there continues to be a growing demand from countries that are very interested in either bringing back Peace Corps volunteers to countries that were closed, or launching new Peace Corps programs in Africa countries. So the demand is very, very strong. But you may hear from my colleague Siri and others that globally applications for service organizations are down. Not only with the Peace Corps, but other service organizations such as AmeriCorps, the military. We're seeing kind of right now a dip in volunteerism. And that is affecting not only Peace Corps in Africa, but also all of our regions. So I would say that is kind of that is the state of Peace Corps Africa as we know it. And that is all for me. And I would love to turn now this presentation over to our country director in the Gambia, Siri.
I am actually in the United States right now. I am in Maine on vacation, and so um, not in the typical humid summer weather of the Gambia, where I now call home. But before I dive into what is happening with Peace Corps of the Gambia, I do want to thank Ozzy, who is on the call, who is probably worried I'm going to call him out, but he is one of our current PCVs, COSing very soon. So, Ozzy, if your connection allows you and there are questions, feel free to chime in and be kind of a first-hand account. Oh, and Rue is here too. Okay, if anyone else is here who I haven't seen, Rue is one of our Peace Corps response volunteers who joined us a few months ago. Ozzy is a agriculture volunteer. Thank you for the heart, Ozzy, who is, yeah, just a few months away from COS. Um, so grateful. And Luke, wow, you all are rock stars. All right, Luke is an education volunteer. Thank you all for joining. So I have a good crew. So I think when we get to Q&A, I'll open it up beyond myself. I also want to just give a shout out to Doug, who is part of my family's Small World Connections, Doug Teschner. He is a friend of my parents from college, and then they all went on to join the Peace Corps. So I come from a long line of Peace Corps family members, and Doug was a country director and was a mentor to me, and it's nice to see you here, Doug. But yeah, I come from a family with 6 RPCVs. And then my husband and I met in the Peace Corps. And so, including the 2 of us, there are 8 of us in the extended family who served in the Peace Corps. So, as Doug knows, I grew up surrounded by South American handicrafts, and my parents would dress me up in Bolivian ponchos and hats and take baby pictures of me. And so the Peace Corps has very much been part of my family's story, so much so that I was a teenager rolling my eyes at all their stories and all the people saying how cool my parents were. And then, it ended up being a great path for me. My aunt and uncle are RPCVs and 2 of my cousins as well. And then in 2001, I went to Peace Corps Lesotho, where I met my husband. And now, for the last year, we've been living in the Gambia with our 7-year-old son. And so most of the PCVs on this call know my son pretty well. 7-year-old Indigo, and he was looking at my slides just before I dive in, and he said he knows pretty much all the volunteers in the pictures, and he said, I had to write down this quote: I want to give a shout out to all those PCVs for supporting all the people in the Gambia. And then I said, Indigo, there are going to be people who were in the Peace Corps a long time ago, so he had a message for you as well, which is another shout out to the past PCVs for all the work they've been doing. And I really feel like I can't sum it up better than that. One of the things I wanted to do was to thank all of you for your service, and thank you for being interested to show up and hear what's happening today. So, and we have lots of ways for you to plug in and stay connected, which is really rewarding. It's been rewarding for me to come back as a staff member, and to be in a new part of the continent for me with Peace Corps. I'm probably as far away from Lesotho as I could be in the continent. Maybe Morocco would be a little bit further, but it's been wonderful to be in this role. And actually, just a few months ago, I was able to go back to Lesotho and, bring my kid, and my husband and I visited our homestay families, met up with our counterparts, visited the Peace Corps Lesotho office. So if any of you have been dreaming of that kind of trip, and if Peace Corps still exists where you served, I really encourage you to think about that, because it's a beautiful thing. There are a lot of staff who have been around for 20, 30 years. You will likely see at least a few familiar faces. So yeah, with all that said, I think we'll move on to the next slide, and I'll shift more away from myself and more to the Gambia. So this is a photo of our programming and training and evaluation team, at least a section of them. And I wanted to include it because I figured most of you have fond memories of these folks in your countries where you served. I'm amazed. Thank you for adding in the chat, by the way, all the places you served, because I can't believe how many times some of you have been in the Peace Corps. So thank you for that. But this photo includes LCFs and program assistants, training manager in the Gambia, and our DPT is there in the front with the red glasses, Nikel. But I feel like this photo captures the energy that you find in Peace Corps Africa, and definitely the energy you find in the Gambia. We have been, although I've only been there a year, we are grateful to have been in the Gambia, with the exception of the COVID pause, nonstop since 1967. We have so much love and support in the country. It's a wonderful place to be serving as country director. We're very beloved. We're a country where there really are not a lot of big international agencies. And so Peace Corps really stands out in the Gambia. In fact, the president of the country, when he first met our current US ambassador, the very first thing he asked her was, when is Peace Corps coming back? Because he met her when we still had not reopened. And then he went on to tell her about a story of an RPCV who had been in his village when he was a kid, and how that RPCV shaped his career and his life. The same thing, it happens so often. I'm trying to keep the wonder of it, but all the ministers I've met, everyone I've met in local government has a Peace Corps story. And I always get reports about where our PCVs are, who people saw along the side of the road, the language skills they heard, the Mandinka and Wolof and Pular skills they know that they have. So we're really fortunate to be working in close partnership with the government with a lot of affection. We currently have 47 Peace Corps volunteers and trainees, and right now we have 5 on track pending medical clearances for a 3rd-year extension. 2 of those extensions are actually from people who were reinstated after being evacuated during COVID. So you'll see a photo of one of them later, but we have 2 people who one had just a few months of service, one had, I think, over a year of service. They were evacuated during COVID. They held on for 2+ years in the States, and thankfully for us, we're still available to come back. And now, as they are getting close to completing their 2-year service, they're looking at a 3rd-year extension. We are working in the education, health, and agriculture sectors right now, and all of the focus in those sectors really tends to come back to a common theme of investing in children's well-being. So in education, it's early childhood literacy and numeracy. Health is a lot about vaccinations, supporting young infants, supporting expectant mothers, postpartum mothers, looking at birth weights. And then agriculture is focused on community nutrition and family food security and better diversity of vegetable and fruit access. We also have Peace Corps Response. It's a small but growing program. I see a question for Rue in the chat. I'm really glad Rue happens to be here. But yeah, we've had a few Peace Corps Response volunteers. They each have been lined up for a year so far. And really grateful to have response volunteers coming in with more specific technical skills. We tend to call the 2-year volunteers our generalists, and the Peace Corps response volunteers often come in with a very specific technical skill set that is a good match for what our partners need. The response volunteers do fall under the umbrellas typically of education, health, and agriculture. So we try to have everything aligned together in those sectors. And as Kimberly said, we are working to integrate climate, youth, and gender into all that we do. It is a work in progress, but we're also looking at that even with our operations. So we have some solar equipment coming to support our electricity needs in the local Peace Corps offices. We do have solar already at our training center. And so those are themes that, just as Kimberly said, we really can't ignore in a country like the Gambia. And one thing that I think there are a few RPCVs from Gambia here, if I saw the notes right, but if you came back, you would see a really different infrastructure setup. We have a regional office now out in the Upper River region in Basse. We've upgraded the training center we have, and we are hopefully about to move into a new office. And I would say that one thing we're continuing to do and invest in that you all, I'm sure, as RPCVs did when you were in the Peace Corps, and that we're continuing to focus a lot on, is having opportunities for deep reflection and learning. In the Gambia, as in so many African countries, there are obviously many, many ties between our peoples and our history, due in part to the slave trade. And so we talk a lot about history, culture, identity, intercultural competency, and are always looking for ways to go deeper in those conversations, both for staff and for volunteers. We have a lot of interesting conversations around identity. The Gambia is a place where, for example, it's illegal to be homosexual, and yet we also have LGBTQ volunteers who are in the closet. And so we do a lot of work cross-culturally with our staff to try to and with PCVs to look at, like, how can we really bridge our two cultures and our norms and come together. And that said, even in the United States, there isn't one culture. Obviously, we are a very diverse, broad range of people with all different perspectives. So there are a lot of juicy topics to dive into that I'm really proud of. So we can go to the next slide. So some new language we've been using, I think globally, but definitely in Africa, are the hidden gems. Kimberly mentioned that, that interest in volunteerism is down, and that is one challenge that we are having in Peace Corps. I think that there is a lot of extra stress that came into the world during COVID. There's a lot of political stress in the United States. There's just global conflict. A lot of people, I think, have an instinct to kind of hunker down and go within and try to find a safe spot in the world. And so I suspect that is part of what's going on. But another thing that's happening is that now Peace Corps, probably unlike when most of us served, Peace Corps allows you to choose where you want to serve now. And so I know in 2000, when I applied, if I had had the choice, I probably would have chosen a country that sounded glamorous, where I could see elephants, like Kenya or Tanzania. And I never would have chosen Lesotho out of a map. And yet it ended up being a really wonderful place to serve. So now we do, a lot of applicants are choosing their country, and we're looking for ways to put more of a spotlight and kind of market these so-called hidden gem countries, the places that are really wonderful places to serve, have incredibly rewarding experiences, but like the Gambia, are not a place that most Americans know about. We're lucky in the Gambia in that we're a country that most people know about or don't know about, but they also don't have very many negative stereotypes about, where there are other countries where there might have been, some kind of disaster or an epidemic of some kind or a conflict, and that is what, people associate with the country. And yet, as you all know, Peace Corps would not be operating somewhere if it wasn't a safe place to serve. If we couldn't meet the medical needs, if we couldn't keep volunteers safe, we wouldn't be there. And so we're trying to rebrand some of these countries that tend to get lower levels of applicants as the hidden gems, because truly they are. And most of the PCVs who apply to serve, who come to the Gambia, have applied to serve where needed most. And I would say, while the Gambia is not for everyone, we find most people are happily surprised with their assignment and end up happily serving. We offer the kind of Peace Corps experience that, you know, some people on our team call a traditional Peace Corps experience. It's the Peace Corps experience that, you know, I think my parents expected to have in the 70s, of like being in a rural village, being with a homestay family, probably not having running water. Ironically, I think my parents didn't have some of those things. But, you know, back in the day, people really, the posh core wasn't a thing. There are some very, very comfortable Peace Corps experiences where you're in a city, where you have Wi-Fi in your house. We are a country that does not have that. And I think that can be intimidating sometimes and can make things harder, but the experience of living in rural villages, being integrated into a family compound is a very, it can be challenging. I won't lie. And, you know, PCVs on the call now can attest to that, I'm sure. But there's also great, great reward and beauty and safety. It's we always say to volunteers, the safest place you can be is in your village, because you're a known entity. You know, no one can do anything where there won't be some kind of community consequence to it. Everyone knows what happens in the village. And so for the right people, you know, coming to a place like the Gambia is deeply fulfilling. The volunteer in the photo here is Sean. He is one of the volunteers who was with us before COVID, came back, and hopefully now will be extending. We can go to the next slide. So, I was hoping that Luke, who's on the call, was in this photo. Luke, I'm sorry, I think you got cropped right there on the left. This is Luke's group, his education group, a really wonderful group that came in. But we, you know, given the low numbers and some of the negative stereotypes about Africa as a continent, we would love your help in spreading the word about the wonders of Peace Corps service and the rewards of serving in Africa. I mean, it's unbelievable to see the countries you all have served in and how much they've likely changed. Some of the countries you've served in are no longer open now, unfortunately, but you all know firsthand how powerful this experience is, and you are absolutely the best people to be talking about it. So we really encourage you to think about people in your life who could be interested. I've been trying to plant seeds while I've been in the States with my friends' kids who are preteens and teenagers, and try to normalize it. Like, yeah, of course, like Peace Corps is a rite of passage. Like, it's the best way to get away from your parents when you're older and have this great experience. And you know, but there are formal tools now, and I think Heather may speak a bit more to this, but there is a campaign now that there's a link to here of Each One Reach One, where there are some tools to make it easy so that you can talk more about your Peace Corps experience, encourage the next generation to get involved. Jessica Vig, whose email I put here, is someone on the recruitment team who, oh yeah, Sean was in Peace Corps Ethiopia. I think he's going to be a lifer with Peace Corps. Jessica Vig is someone who you can write to if you are interested in getting involved with recruitment. I know we have Peace Corps brand ambassadors right now. So PCVs who are in the field, one of the new committees, so to speak, that they can be on is to be a brand ambassador, where they spend part of their time joining events, talking about the Peace Corps, talking about their experience to try to demystify it, because we find that applicants and people thinking about it really want to speak to volunteers the most. And so Jessica is someone, if you want to just pop into one event or be a resource, she's someone you can talk to. You can also, you know, if you have time and interest, like be on the circuit more regularly. It's a great way to get out and inspire the next generation of volunteers. One thing we're doing that I listed here on the slide is in the Gambia, we have, I think with the help of Andrew's team, Andrew, who's on this call, actually, we are getting in touch with RPCVs from the Gambia to see who would be interested in writing a testimonial about their experience, and or to be someone who could get on the phone with invited applicants to come to the Gambia. Because you all probably remember that moment of you get the information, you've been invited to serve wherever. If it's a country you've never heard of, there's that shock. And we, as CDs, we've been joking that you used to go to look at your family encyclopedia to figure out where the country was, or an atlas. Now people are Googling. But still, it's hard to see yourself in that place or in that country. So if RPCVs from countries are open to talking to applicants and speaking firsthand about, yeah, I get it. I remember when I couldn't stop crying before I got on the plane, 2 years seemed like forever. But it was so worth it. It shaped my life. Like all these stories that we have, would really encourage you to think about plugging in, even if it's just a little bit of time. And again, look at the Each One Reach One campaign, where you can find some tools and things that you can post on social media. And then I had to include some links here. I don't know if you can actually click on these, but I'm really proud of the social media pages we have for Peace Corps of the Gambia. We have an amazing communications coordinator, Isa2, who is working with our media committee to put together this content. It's really PCV driven. And so if you're on Instagram or Facebook, consider looking us up, but more importantly, find the country where you served if they still are operating. It's a great way to stay in touch. Next slide, please. And then this is one of our COSing volunteers also, Haley from our education group with her host mom. And I feel like I don't need to say this to all of you because you all are so devoted to Peace Corps, but consider serving again in Africa region. If you're up for it, you could look at another 2-year service. You could look at a shorter service with Peace Corps response. And there's also virtual service. If it now is not a chapter of your life where you want to hop on a plane and go to a village again, virtual service could be a great opportunity. But I would also encourage you to stay connected to your Peace Corps post and ask that team how you can help, because you never know what kind of interesting pop-up events might be possible. Again, we all love having visitors. And right now, the country director role, because of the low numbers, is shifting. And I feel like I now spend part of my time in a marketing role, as you can see from this call. But just we're really trying to spread this experience as much as possible. So I'm sure Kimberly and myself, if you're looking for a specific country to connect to, I think we can probably put you in touch with some of the right people in Africa region. So I think that's all I wanted to cover for now. So I will pause there, and I think we're going to have time for Q&A in a bit.
Thank you so much, Siri and Kimberly, for sharing. Hi, everyone. My name is Heather. I'm a program specialist in the Office of the Third Goal, based in Peace Corps headquarters in Washington. And we're just thrilled to be able to partner with NPCA today and to connect with all of you. Also, I don't know, Andrew, if you would like to introduce yourself, given your connection to this group.
Sure, and that was an amazing presentation. It was so wonderful to see those pictures and hear those stories about the Gambia. My name is Andrew Wilson. I'm the director of the Office of the Third Goal and Return Volunteer Services at Peace Corps headquarters, and I am a Senegal RPCV that I served in '94 to '97. And so yeah, it was great to see that here today, and nice to see all of you.
Thank you, Andrew. So as Siri mentioned, I'm going to quickly show you the Each One Reach One campaign. The idea of this is that every Peace Corps volunteer, returned Peace Corps volunteer, can connect with one person who might become a Peace Corps volunteer. If each one of us could connect with one person who decides, yes, I'm going to join the Peace Corps, it could significantly boost the numbers. As we've heard, volunteerism is down. And so everything that we can do to help spread the word, you know, to remind everyone that Peace Corps is back and it's still running. So on this website here, you can find some social media images that you could quickly grab and post, as well as information one sheets. If anyone is asking you for more details, right? How long do I serve and what are the benefits and how do I apply? A lot of that information is in here, and you can informally act as a recruiter, you know, brush up on your knowledge and share with your networks and see if you can recruit one person to join the Peace Corps. So that link is in the chat. We're going to open up now for questions. And one of the first questions that I saw, and another related question, is about posts in the Africa region that have closed, and if they will ever reopen or if those posts are being monitored. So there was a question about Niger and a question about the Central African Republic. And I don't know if either one of you might know, you know, are those countries that are being monitored for possible re-entry? Will we ever go back to some of those posts that have been closed, et cetera?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I'll take that one. You know, as I shared a little earlier, there is very high demand for Peace Corps right now. And historically, how it works for us going back to a country is that the embassy in the various countries will reach out to Peace Corps and start conversations with us. Will indicate maybe through the ambassador or from the state desk that is representing that country, that they're interested in Peace Corps, and they'll you know, we'll have conversations. And then potentially we would do on-site assessments to see about the viability of either opening a new post or returning to a post that we had previously departed. And as currently we have, as I shared, lots and lots of interest globally. And the conditions that we're operating under right now, it's probably fair to say that our demand is outpacing our budget. So we have to be a little, you know, we definitely have to be choosy as to how many countries we might be able to re-enter, just kind of based on various factors as well as budget considerations.
Thank you, Kimberly. Another question that I saw in the chat is if volunteers are being given a malaria vaccine instead of having to take the prophylactic.
I'm definitely not at all an expert in anything medical related. so I can say that, but I can say that in conversations that I have been a part of with our Office of Health Services, I have heard that there is new emerging, you know, vaccines that are available now. I would imagine that if Peace Corps was to consider moving in that direction, it would involve testing and various clearances, obviously policy adjustments. So I have heard that there is this, so I can assure us all that it is on people's radar.
Thank you. I also have a question for Rue, if willing. Don't want to put you on the spot, but I know someone was asking if you could share a little bit more about what you do as a response volunteer. You know, kind of how long is your service and what kind of projects do you work on as a response volunteer, if you're willing?
Sure, happy to, because I'm actually having quite a good experience as a response volunteer. I am with SOS Children's Village. This is the organization that I was assigned to. At first, I was assigned to work in the youth department. I still do that, but now I'm kind of around everywhere, just putting my, just anywhere that I can be of use, basically. And I've had a really good experience with them. I like SOS a lot. They get things done. We had another response volunteer before me, and I know that he had, oh, I think it might be raining, so the electricity might go out in a second, and we don't have internet when the electricity goes out, so just a warning. But I know that the response volunteer who came before me, he had a little bit more of a complicated situation, and he ended up not being able to work very well with his organization. And it was a bit disappointing for him. But I have had a great experience. I love SOS. I'm working with youth in the community. We are doing a youth entrepreneurship training right now. So training youth to how to start and manage their own businesses. We did a 5-day workshop where they learned negotiation and copyright and starting and maintaining a business, and just really encouraging the youth to do something productive, and that there's solutions, and staying here. The solution isn't always migrating or leaving the country. There are climate change initiatives. I'm also working sometimes with the funding department, so I just do a little bit of everything. I'm very happy with it.
How long is your service, Rue?
1 year total. I'm about 2.5 months into it.
Wonderful. Congratulations. All right, I have another question for Kimberly or Siri. Is there an upper age limit to become a Peace Corps volunteer? Potentially again.
No, there is not. And in fact, I don't want to speak for Siri, but I can say personally that when I was in Eswatini, we really appreciated having a diverse age band of volunteers, because all volunteers brought with them such wonderful backgrounds and experiences. And we really welcome volunteers of all ages.
Yeah, I think it will just affect the medical clearance process. We tend to get 20-somethings in the Gambia because it is a challenging place to serve in terms of heat, and the medical infrastructure is not as strong as we would like. So the Office of Health Services is fairly risk adverse with health. But in a country like Eswatini, Lesotho, when I served in Lesotho, I had a 72-year-old Peace Corps grandmother, we all called her. So it's wonderful to have an intergenerational experience, both as a PCV and for staff. Mm-hmm. And the college degree question I just saw pop in, I think it's not, we have a volunteer with a vocational degree. I think it's more, you need to have a certain number of years of experience paired with different types of education, but a 4-year college degree is not required.
Thank you, Siri. I would love to invite people to raise their hand or come off mute if they would like to ask a question directly. And I'm thinking, Doug, you might like to go ahead, Doug.
Well, it's just nice to hear what's going on. As a former country director, I've been a little bit out of the loop since it's been about 8 years, but I had to evacuate volunteers from 2 countries. First from Ukraine in 2014 during Putin's first invasion there, and then due to Ebola in Guinea. And I was struck by, and when we evacuated from Guinea, you know, the CDC was bringing in more people. USAID was bringing in more people. Even the military came in, not to Guinea, but next door to Liberia. And when I saw this worldwide evacuation, you know, it makes me nervous. I know we're really concerned about safety, but at what point is the mission compromised? And, you know, we're trying to build the organization back up from zero. You know, obviously a lot of things have to be done to keep volunteers as safe as possible, but you know, if we're going to be out in the world, there are some risks involved. And I think that this is really a fundamental issue for Peace Corps going forward. And just a shout out to Siri, you're rocking as a CD. I didn't even know you were going to be on today, and I just happened to come on for this. And so great to see you, and so excited to see you successful in that role. Thank you.
May I make a comment related to that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've served in a number of French-speaking West Africa countries. I was evacuated first from Guinea in 1967. At the time, we were told it was the first time that an entire Peace Corps was evacuated out of a country. And that was due to the fact that they arrested us all. So but our only thing we could do was get evacuated. And the second time was with the COVID. So I have the pleasure of being evacuated twice from Guinea.
Thank you both for your comments. It's above my pay grade, I think, to to comment on some of these high level topics. I don't want to go out of scope of my role. But I will say, Doug, I think the Peace Corps was facing, it definitely has not been easy to come back from the worldwide evacuation, but the Peace Corps was also facing people literally getting trapped with no medical services. So I think there were a lot of considerations that went into it. But yeah, I think it's always a fine line, the balance between embracing risk and trying to avoid it.
I think we can take one more question from Jackie, and then we're going to have to close it out.
I am so impressed with these presentations. I'm almost in tears. I have been creating what's called the Global Impact Network, and it has resources in literacy and wellness and environment and employment all over the world to further the goals that I learned in the Peace Corps in Liberia, Group 966 to 68. The resources that I have would really reinforce absolutely everything that you're doing in every country. My question to you is, how do I partner with you to be able to really bring this all around? Because I'm working on a gamified literacy app that I want to bring to every country in the world, among many other resources of apps for wellness for women, and the resources go on and on. But my frustration is to how to engage. I've talked to Dan to some degree. He can't quite seem to figure it out. However, maybe with enough brains on this screen, we can figure out how we can bring the resources that I have that are mostly nonprofits to the Gambia. I have a really strong one in the Gambia. I'm frustrated. I haven't found the bridging the gap. I'm going to be talking to somebody today about bridging that gap between all that I have in my own little tiny Peace Corps of my own, essentially, to be able to now re-engage it to that which I was taught and lived for 2 years in Liberia. Spellbound, huh? What the heck do we do, huh?
I'd be happy. I put my email in the chat. I'd be happy to be in touch about the Gambia. I don't know. I wonder the National Peace Corps Association and Office of the Third Goal might be more in that bridge role than the country directors, but that's just a hypothesis.
I'd be happy to reach out, Jackie. I got your email here, and I'll send you an email myself.
That would be great, Wilson. I would appreciate that, because there's just so much abundance, and that what we can collaborate with together. I don't know how much longer I got, maybe 25 years. I want to be able to get a lot more happening with my soulmates, so to speak, the Peace Corps.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Yeah. I think we're going to pass it back now to Carla to close us out and give us some further updates.
Yeah, I think this is actually a great transition. First of all, again, thank you, the speakers, and our Peace Corps friends, Andrew, Heather, for supporting this effort. Um, I have talked quite a bit about the National Peace Corps Association being a community of collective, that we have a collective voice and a community voice, and we are powerful if we work and speak, as one in terms of the numbers of people we represent and the number of people who've served. There's power in our collectivity. So a lot of what I've been focusing on and what I am advocating for is looking at how we promote, advocate, and show our force. And so, Jackie, I don't know what kinds of conversations you've had, but that's really the direction that I'm going in. And this is talking about indicators to show from a collective perspective what affiliates are doing, from a collective perspective, what we believe, there are certain things that we have a commonality, and how do we begin to make sure that that vision is shown on a broader scale. So that's really a big thing that we're focusing on at the National Peace Corps Association right now. Indicators have been created. You will see them soon. And how we engage with affiliates, but not just affiliates. They're individuals who choose not to be part of a specific group, of which there are over 150 that are part of the National Peace Corps Association, but a large number of groups that are created that are not part of the association. How do we bring those people into the fold and make sure that our collective voice is heard? So I think this is a great place that you and I can engage as well. For new volunteers, we're working very closely with the Peace Corps to figure out how do we connect with current volunteers, how do they learn about the National Peace Corps Association, how do we make sure that the National Peace Corps Association is well known and people see that they have a value add by joining. So for those volunteers that are on the call through your own networks, please consider looking at our website, seeing what is there. There is, I think anyway, one way or another, via affiliate group or by joining us, a home for you, so that you can stay connected. It is, I think the richness is in the community, and I probably am going to keep repeating that, so I probably should stop. We are a great group. I don't know if I can ask either Tiffany, if you could possibly put in the chat our website, just so make it easier for people. And please just reach out. On that note, again, I want to thank everybody on the call. I know it's not always easy to kind of work things like this into your day. So to have this number of people who have thought this was important enough to fit into your day, especially Siri, Kimberly, really, really greatly appreciate your presence. It's so important to show a unified community. And so it is much appreciated. With that note, I'm going to thank everyone, wish everybody a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the summer.